Thanks, I hate it. I can see my breath. Good frosty morning, everyone. It's 21 degrees outside, and I'm out in the shop because, well, I hate myself. Also, we planned this like 2 weeks ago, and this wasn't in the forecast. This is James's hardcore off-road vehicle. It's a Mazda Tribute with tires and overlanding stuff that has still probably done more off-roading than 90% of the Toyota Land Cruisers you see on Bring a Trailer, because this did go down a dirt road once. But right now its ability to go down a dirt road is a little bit hampered by a starter motor that will intermittently not do starter motor things. And there's no videos on YouTube of how to do this specific vehicle. There's the V6 one, and there's this same engine in other cars, but nobody has shown how to do the starter in a Mazda Tribute slash... This is a first-gen Ford Escape, effectively. Mazda and Ford kind of co-developed it. This is actually a Mazda MZR 2.3-liter four-cylinder, a slightly larger version of what's in my Miata, same engines in the Fusion, basically everything Ford from this time. Absolutely phenomenal engine. Absolutely terrible packaging for the starter motor. We have here from O'Reilly's an Ultima brand new starter, not a reman. Buy it, install it, forget it. I have thoughts about that. Look at me, I actually remembered the little magnetic tray this time. Instead of like getting 30% of the way through a project, having all of my, oh God, I almost tripped. Usually I get like 30% of the way through a project, I've got bolts all lined up here and I go, wait a minute. I bought something for this, twice actually, because I forget that I'll have them. I'll be standing in the line at Harbor Freight and I'm like, I need that in my life. And then I end up with a collection of them. Let's see, 8mm, I'm assuming. Yeah. I don't think I mentioned actually the coolest part about this thing. This is an all-wheel drive manual Mazda Tribute. There are definitely not many of these around though. There is one more here in Wichita where the guy put in a Mazda Speed Turbo setup from a Mazda Speed 3, I think, which also has the 2.3, which kind of sounds like the best thing ever. I saw it at Cars and Coffee once. Have not seen it anywhere online or in person since then, but I need to know more. I don't know why I jacked up the car before doing all this stuff from the top. Just like to make my life difficult, I guess. It's so tiny. Wow. It's also probably about time to replace this. 2018 battery, that's 4 or 5 years old. That could actually be contributing to starting issues. 590 CCA. Diehard, whose brand is that? Is that AutoZone?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's AutoZone.
Oh yeah, James is here. He's holding the camera.
Hello.
It's almost like I'm a real YouTuber. I got someone holding the camera now. He actually holds the camera for the Patreon specials as well as letting me use a bunch of his way more expensive equipment, though I am slowly building up my own collection of expensive equipment because spending money is a lot more fun than making it. Looks like just 4 more 8s to get this battery tray out of here. Kind of a nice little plastic piece, actually. I really appreciate that it's made out of plastic so it doesn't rust out like everything else. I mean, this is a pretty rust-free truck. There's like a little bit on the pinch welds, but nothing else. How many miles does this have on it?
Well, that's the tricky part. It's got another engine in it, so...
Well, yeah,
the body itself has over 220, I think.
Okay, I mean, from a rust standpoint, that's what I was curious about. Yeah, this has... I blew up the first engine in this, actually. We were doing a photo shoot with a Lamborghini, and I was trying to stay ahead of the Lamborghini, which basically the same thing. And I was like, huh. You know, we went around a corner, and it sounded like we flicked up a bunch of gravel into the wheel wells. And I was like, huh, that gravel noise sure is hanging around a long time. I took my foot off the gas, the gravel noise went away. Got back on the gas, and the gravel noise came back. I was like, hey, I think we just lost the engine. And he thought I was joking. Like, you're like, huh, weird joke, but okay. Because you're hanging out like the back of it trying to get pictures of this Lamborghini, and something I'm really excited for is to see all the sins that were made when this engine was put in. Like this bolt was not tightened down at all. Not a huge deal, but come on, lads. Oh yeah, the best part of that was I then proceeded to just ride off into the sunset in the Lamborghini and left James waiting for the tow truck. I mean, he told me to, but
That was a good time.
I think I would have preferred to stay and wait. That thing was terrible. What was it, a Murcielago?
Yep.
With straight piped exhaust. Trash, absolute trash. That Lamborghini sounded like an entire fleet of Honda Civics all at once. Here we go. And apparently every wiring harness is attached to this thing. Battery tray out of the way. The next thing to get out of the way is this under tray here, which is just a whole bunch of 10s, only one of which broke because as much as I said this is a rust-free truck, it's still a Mazda and they are pretty notorious for rust. Luckily we can do without that bolt, but annoyingly to get the under tray off, there's all those 10 mils and then there's this screw, little plastic screw rivet job that you have to take the wheel off for, which is super frustrating. And you can see the beginnings of some rust there. This is not going to be a fun vehicle to work on in about 5 years.
Oh, who are we kidding? This won't be around in 5 years.
Oh, yeah, I can see the starter really well from here now. It's just really hard to point out to the camera. How do you get those monster sponsorships? I need to talk to some of those rally guys. Right there, what my finger's on is part of the starter motor. It goes back that way from here. The upper bolt is there. The lower bolt's really hard to get to. The easiest thing here seems like taking out this motor mount would make this an absolute cinch, because then I could get my hand all the way around there and I could, if needed, jack the engine up from here. But there is a top motor mount here, I think. Motor mount on that side, motor mount in the back. So the engine should hold itself up with this out. I don't see a whole lot of reason not to do that. Your motor mount's a bit marginal, by the way. And we did put the battery on the tester, and the tester said the battery's a bit marginal as well. So everything is, you know, used vehicle prices are real high right now. You can just get out of this thing. Are you able to see me at all?
Not really.
Hi. Oh, and yes, I do have a jack stand under here, not just a jack. Though I do leave the jack under just so I have two things supporting the car. And the rear tires are blocked and locked and all that stuff. This access isn't terrible. I just worry about my ability to get a tool on some of these parts because I can't really get my arm up in here to the extent that I'd like. Of course, there's a wire on that. All the wires on the starter motor are on the side that's like butted right up against the intake manifolds. There's kind of no way to get tools on them without removing the bumper, radiator, condenser assembly and getting at it from the front, which is what I'm trying to avoid. Because the closest I came to seeing how to do this on this particular vehicle was seeing it done on a second gen, the kind of boxier one that I absolutely love. And they just had the whole front of the car torn apart, which seems unnecessary. Everything else in here looks great, almost like this engine was recently replaced or something. Cool! What the fuck am I looking at? Oh, fuck you!
Thank you for turning your jet engine off.
This is the bolt out of the top. It's a bolt with a threaded portion on the top so that you can put like a ring terminal on there with a ground wire or something and then put a nut on that. That's exactly what's going on with the bottom one. This is run into the trans or engine block, I'm not sure which, and then there's a ring terminal and then there's another nut that you have to take off the ring terminal. Of course, that was over torqued, so I start to undo it and it just spins the whole thing. So now I need to get like a box end wrench up in here somehow and actually break the nut loose before I can get the ring terminal off so that I don't tear that ground wire up. It's real fun. That's also a problem with the ground wires on facelifted E46s. Yeah, so if you're doing a valve cover gasket, make real sure that you don't over torque those nuts when you put them back on. or you'll tear your ground wires like my buddy did and have to resolder them. Where is... Up here, that's the oil pressure sensor, I think. There's this wiring harness that has this little tab that's supposed to be held under, I'm assuming, that stud, and it's in my way. Okay, there you can see what we're dealing with. So it's a stud that's kind of, it's a stud with a built-in nut, and then another nut on it, and it just went out of focus again, but that's more or less what's going on. Yay. Jake wins. It's facing forward in the car, so a bunch of grime got in here, so I had to get this off first to get loose the eyelet that was between here, so I had to do that maneuver, but there was stuff here and wires running right by here, so it was just kind of a pain, but it's out. Threads look great, so actually the starter is technically not held in anymore. So I can go under here and wiggle it out. So I've got the starter oriented so that the wires are at the bottom and it's facing up. If I can wiggle it just a little more, I can pretty much just get a socket on them from the bottom. And I'm going to take those off with an impact. The reason for the impact is there's nothing holding the starter in place anymore, so I really need that strong hammer breakaway torque to get those loose. Otherwise, you know, if I try to go at it with a ratchet, it's just going to be wiggling the starter around all over the place. You know, there's no resistance to the torque that I'm applying on it steadily over time. It needs that sudden jolt to break those bolts loose. Looks like it's a 10, a 12, and another 12. There we go. So if you look, I don't know if you can look up in here. You can see the starter's just kind of chilling here. This is the oil to water heat exchanger. You know, oil swirls through here, coolant swirls through here, and they pass close to each other but not touching, and that helps the coolant heat the oil heat the coolant, helps them equalize their temperature. Varies depending on the application. A lot of cars with this engine didn't have this. My Miata does have this. I think later ones didn't. After going through that and looking at it now, I definitely think it would be worth the time to take this front motor mount off. There's two bolts here, one bolt from the other side coming through long ways, and then this part of the motor mount could come out, and then you can just unbolt the bracket from the transmission fairly easily. I keep calling it a motor mount. It's the front trans mount, probably is what it's called. And I'd have so much more room to work if that was off. So yeah, I'm not seeing any real reason that the front end of the car has to come all the way apart for this. This seems, I mean, it's fairly doable. A little bit of a mess, but whatever. If your car is super rusty, I can't imagine how much of a pain this would be, but... Okay, those two nuts are 13 millimeters. Yep, helps if it's set to loosen. It's one of the big ones. Caught it. If I'd looked closer at the new one, I probably would have noticed that this bolt didn't have to come off. That was the hard one to get to. Now we got to do all that, but in reverse. James just asked what this was, and this might actually have something to do with why this old one died, because it's completely missing. That's a fresh air vent, and as you can maybe see, it's got a little half moon of rubber blocking it, and then a little further in there's a half moon blocking it the other way, so it's kind of a zigzag passageway to keep dirt and stuff from getting up in there. This does not have the baffles, and as you can see, it's filthy in there, so I bet this thing got a whole bunch of dirt in there. It's all over the commutator and the brushes, and so this thing's just intermittent as hell. Though I think what was happening is it wasn't disengaging properly, like the Bendix drive wasn't was getting stuck on or something. Who knows? It's old, it's crap. Let's get it out of there. Let's see if these are the same sizes. I think they are. Ah, there we go, yeah. And then a 10. Yeah, okay. So now I'll just wiggle this back into the position that I just took that one out of so that I can get the cables back on so that I can get everything else back on. So yeah, it just mounts right like that, right on the front. There's the bottom one that had the ground strap on it, and then the top one, pretty easy peasy. And then the intake manifold is sitting right here and kind of wrapping around below it, so there's no real way to get these connectors off in situ without removing the whole nose of the car like I saw a guy doing on a second generation. But this has only taken like a half hour, 45 minutes of work. So I don't see any reason to do another half hour just to get the front end ripped off this thing. You gotta snake this around. I've got it sitting how I had the other one, so that the wiring harness is here. Spacing is a bit hosed. The studs are slightly further apart on the new starter than they were on the old one, so I had to kind of force it. Doesn't need to be anything too crazy. So now I'm pushing it up and rotating it, and you can see right here, maybe, that's the ground strap that goes on that lower stud, so you want to make sure that doesn't get caught underneath anything. And just walk it back. Oh, nice! Look at that, there's a little locating nub there that will slide into the starter itself, and that'll help hold it in place and help me avoid cross-threading or otherwise not getting this lined up correctly. I appreciate that very much, Ford/Mazda. And there it's on. All right, so it's in place. Getting this out of the way was a massive help. So now, if you want to hand me the stud from hell. One more bonus of taking down this side of the splash guard like this is it makes an excellent headrest. I can just chill out and not strain my neck muscles. Because when I strain my neck muscles, I'm also straining my lower back muscles. And we all know I can't afford that. What I accidentally did was put the stud through the ground strap and then into the starter, which can mess with the torque spec, I guess, and let it loosen itself back up, because that's the whole reason that second nut is on there. Because it's supposed to go like that with the, where's my pointy stick? It's supposed to go like that. There's the starter, there's the stud nut thing, and then there's the ground strap, and then the other nut goes here. I accidentally put the ground strap in here, which is not what you're supposed to do, so I get to do it again. Ground strap goes on, and where's the nut part of that? There it is. That goes on. Now tighten this down a lot less than you just tighten down the main starter bolt, so that when it comes time to take this off again, you don't have to do all that goofy stuff that I had to do. Literally just like a little more than finger tight will do it. And plug in the oil pressure sensor. And we're all done underneath. I mean, as far as the starter goes, still gotta do the oil change and put the splash shields back on, but we can go back above right now to put in the other stud. All right, this second bolt, super easy. A little wiggle, a little tighten, and it's good to go. I mean, not good to go yet, but I can't hold a flashlight and do this at the same time, so 1 second. Well, that's a starter motor attached to an engine, and all wired up even. So let's get the battery box back in place and the intake and give it a test. Pretty simple. Might go dump this out first though. Man, what have you been doing, off-road? I dumped it off inside the truck. Ideal, obviously. I will say I really appreciate the design of this this battery tie down, because these are removable but also retained by this U-hook shape. So as soon as you unbolt them, they don't just fall down into the engine bay like every other car ever. So good thinking, Ford. How's our battery doing? Repair completed. No. Well, that all seems cromulent. Hey, you like buying things, right?
I think that air filter at least has a couple more years left in it. See, it's fine. You can still see the white part.
This is junk, dude. I'll put it back in if you promise to replace it.
Yeah, I'll do it with the battery. My favorite thing is to watch your mouth while you're trying to do things, because you make these faces where you can't tell if you're focusing or about to finish. So
The answer is both. Where's that wire at? Found it. Mass airflow sensor, check. Mass airflow sensor wire retainer, check. PCV hose. By the way, to take this off, there's this little green tab on the other side that you kind of push counterclockwise. And it's really hard to show because I don't want to bend this hard line. That little green tab, you do that. And that takes that off. Installation's the reverse of removal, James. There we go. It just needed more installation. And then try and get your finger around the bottom of that to make sure that it's fully seated, which it is, because you don't want a vacuum leak. Look at that. It's ready to drive home.
almost.
Get out of here. Shoo. I don't want this thing in here anymore. But let's start it and see if it works. It's a light clutch. With exuberance. Okay, wheel back on. Well, actually, first I guess the under tray back on, then the wheel back on, get this thing back on the ground, and that's the starter motor done and good to go. Actually, let's not get it on the ground. We need to do an oil change first. So let's drop the oil. Old and Busted is gone. I was gonna throw this on the floor, but it probably cracked my floor, so we're just gonna set that down there. Filled up with oil. Old oil looked fine, smelled a little dirty, but overall healthy engine sort of things. New oil's in, level's good. I think this thing's good to go. So there you go, that's more or less how you do a starter on a 2.3 Mazda Tribute. This is the facelifted one. The earlier ones had a 2.0, which I believe is a completely different engine architecture. You don't have to take the bumper off, you don't have to take the radiator and condenser out. You can just do it by taking off the splash shields. It's more or less being done by feel, but it's not all that tricky. If you had a lift, this is probably a 30-minute job. As it was, it probably took us like 2 hours, and a lot of that was just screwing around, you know, as we do. Thanks for watching.